Is what does full recovery look like? And this is a phenomenal question. I'm so glad you asked.
Yeah. The first thing I'm going to say is I just want to always remind everybody that full recovery is possible.
Yeah.
Too many times when people come into our treatment center, they say, we have always heard that if you struggle with eating issues, you are destined to struggle for the rest of your life. They usually will lead off with, I know I can never ever get fully better, but maybe I can manage things a little bit, so it's not so painful. And we want you to know that, full recovery is absolutely possible. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing this deeper work education, because it is getting to the roots and changing from the inside out that makes that full and lasting recovery 100% possible.
Yeah, and it's not only possible, like here at our center, it happens. It happens every day. And so let's talk about what full recovery looks like, what we mean by full recovery, so that you guys can have an even better picture of really what you're shooting for, right?
Yeah. So it's a big question, and Dr. Ashley and I talked a little bit about it before we started today, like how do we take this really kind of big answer and put it together in a way that is relatively concise but also satisfying of all of the components. So in our brainstorming, we really came up with three primary components that we want to be able to expand on a little bit today, and then certainly in future video casts. So the first component is going to be that you have to cultivate a healthy, non-eating disordered relationship with food. Okay. So what does that mean?
Well, so what that means is that you're really going to be able to embrace, you're really going to be able to embrace intuitive eating in its full meaning. Okay. So I know you guys are learning about intuitive eating with Amy. And it's super, super important that you understand really what all of intuitive eating is about, because unfortunately a lot of people think that it's about eating whatever you want, whenever you want. And that's not exactly it. It is eating the foods that you like and foods that you want. It's also eating foods that your body needs to get all of its nutritional needs met. It's also eating what's available, right? And it's also knowing when, even though it's tasty, your body has had enough, when something doesn't feel good to your body, even if it is tasty. So it's a lot of aspects of eating what you want that goes a lot deeper than that. But intuitive eating is so much more than just eating what you want.
Yeah, and it's eating what you want, but it's eating it for the right reasons. Okay, so I think another really important component within this food component is to recognize that part of intuitive eating as a means of getting to be a normal eater is the necessary teasing out the emotional component that is driving this disordered use of food, right, to deal with emotions that you're ill-equipped to deal with otherwise. And we're going to talk about that. That's the second component. But one of the things that we start out with intuitive eating is looking at those hunger cues, hunger and fullness. And the very first thing that I always talk about with my clients is when you reach for that piece of food, I want you to ask yourself, am I physically hungry? Right. If I'm physically hungry, then by all means, we want to give yourself permission to eat according to intuitive eating skills. But if you recognize that you are not physically hungry, but you have this compulsion to eat, then we start looking at, okay, what are the emotional pieces that are going into this desire to eat? Right. And then developing all sorts of emotional tools to deal with whatever was the impetus for you to reach for food.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the food piece of full recovery is I eat when I'm physically hungry. I know how to make those decisions from a place of what do I want and what do I need. I'm not restricting myself. I'm not over consuming.
I don't have good food, bad food.
Right, it's not dieting. And it's all from this place of I want to nourish my body.
Yes. And I'm using food as nourishment, not as emotional support.
That's right. So that's really the second piece then,
Yeah.
right? Full recovery is this emotional component.
Yes, yes.
And that's really going to be about being able to regulate your emotions, being able to respond to your emotions in ways that are psychologically healthy, nurturing, compassionate, and loving, and in ways that really provide true comfort for yourself in the long run. Because let's face it, food is a Band-Aid. It might feel comforting in the moment, but it's only going to last a very short period of time before all of that emotional distress or overwhelm or whatever it might be comes flooding back. So really the full recovery aspect of your emotional self is being able to take care of your emotions and take care of those needs inside of you in ways that really do resolve whatever that distress is inside.
Right. So the beginning components that you're hearing Dr. Ann Ashley and I talk about over and over and over again, including in the Mission Monday, being connected to yourself emotionally, having an awareness of what those feelings are so you can identify those feeling states, right? Then having an additional awareness of what is your emotional response to your recognized emotions, right? Do you accept them? Do you judge them? Do you support yourself? Do you respond to them in a healthy way, or do you reject them and ignore them?
Yeah.
Right? Okay. There we go. We always think and say the same thing. It's great. Okay, so being able to respond to your emotions in a healthy, need-fulfilling way. And in the process of being able to learn how to do that, having that insight, why am I responding in this way? Where did that come from? Cleaning up, healing kind of past, maybe family of origin or interpersonal issues that created this interpersonal template, okay? So that ultimately you end up having a connected, supported, healthy, responsive, loving relationship with yourself and your emotions. And guess what? When you do, you are not going to need food for emotional need.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
It really is that simple, and it's that complicated. Okay? But that emotional component, that's why you're going to hear us talking about these steps over and over and over again, because that eventually will become automatic, right? Eventually you're sad, you identify it, you know what you need to do, you step in and lovingly support yourself, you resolve that sadness, everything's fine, and you've never even thought about pizza throughout that process at all, okay?
Unless you were physically hungry, right? Really wanted pizza, then that would be appropriate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that emotional component is the second part.
Yeah, and I would also add to that, when you are really living in full recovery, that emotional space is not always comfortable, but you really trust yourself. You trust that you can navigate through this. You trust that you can handle this. So you know that you might be heading into the eye of the storm. You know that you might be heading into something difficult, or you're feeling incredibly triggered or overwhelmed. And while that's very uncomfortable, you also know that walking through that and finding safe others, if that's what you're wanting or needing, is going to help you, and you are going to get through this, and you will survive. And so I think that's a big piece, because when people aren't yet in recovery, there's this tremendous fear that they're not going to be able to handle it.
And I love that you mentioned the interpersonal piece. So being able to reach out to others, to help you and to have a trust for that, because others truthfully are better than food. Okay. It probably doesn't feel that way right now, but
the right others,
so in a safe relationship and with your ability to ask for what you need, to clearly express that, to feel worthy enough to both ask for it and then to receive it, right?
Take that space.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are all these components in this really important emotional component that is going to be what helps you to get to full and lasting recovery.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then that segues into the third piece of full recovery, which is really the most exciting piece. And that is
so fun.
Really living a fulfilled, soulful life. that is just so much bigger than your relationship with food. And I really feel like this last, getting to know the community Sunday thread was such a beautiful example of that, of people sharing their adventures, because what I kept hearing over and over again is we went on this great adventure. I was with this great person. We were having these great experiences. There were these great animals. And that's really what full recovery is all about, that you're just living this life that excites you and it fulfills you and it interests you. It aligns with your values, with your goals, with who you are on the inside. And when those needs are being met, man, everything else just kind of pales in comparison, and things don't feel as distressing.
It's interesting listening to what you're saying. It's like, this is what it looks like in full recovery. So like when you are living in that fulfilled way that is feeding your soul. So it's a byproduct of being in full recovery. But similarly, it is also what allows you to get to full recovery.
That's right.
So that stepping in and hearing what your self needs are, hearing what your soul is asking for, right? And loving yourself and stepping in and taking care of yourself by responding to and supporting those soul and self needs, right? There's no room for disorder when you do that.
Okay. There's no need for disorder when you do that.
There is no need. So it really is part of that process that then says, like, I don't need any kind of disorder because I am here for myself. I am living this fully satisfied life. I'm caring enough about myself to support myself with this. And therefore I am then in full recovery, living this on a regular basis.
Right.
Yeah. Which is like so beautiful. That's the gift that is at the end of this really arduous process, right? This beautiful space of full recovery that is just really living from your authentic self, knowing that you can rely on yourself to provide for yourself.
That's right.
A lot of times we hear that people look outside of themselves, like they expect like a partner's going to do that, or they feel resentful because no one's stepping in and doing these things for them. They have these fantasies that say, if I were just this way or that way, then my life would be beautiful. But ultimately, it's a relying upon yourself, okay, to create this, which is both hard, but it's also really wonderful, because I think that the person that you really can count on the most is yourself.
Very empowering.
If you become that loving, consistent, compassionate person for yourself.
Yeah. And I want to add in one little thing I read on social media probably a week or two ago. And I don't remember exactly what it said, but the essence of it basically was living in recovery, or living a recovered life is living a life that you don't have to escape. Right? And I'm just scrolling kind of mindlessly, and I read that and I was like, wow, that's it, right? It is crafting a life for yourself, as you're saying, that you don't have to escape. And that certainly doesn't mean that life has to be rainbows and butterflies all the time. That's not realistic. Part of full recovery is facing the tough stuff. It's showing up. It's doing the hard work. It's having the hard conversations. But I think full recovery is also really intentionally crafting this life that you don't want to stay in bed and pull the covers up over your head. You want to get out there, and you want to just soak up all of the beauty and richness that this world has to offer. So I thought that was a nice summary.
I think that when you're struggling in a disordered life, life feels like it's really, really long, right? And sometimes you hear like, when is life going to be over? When you're living in that full recovered way, it's like, oh my gosh, I want life to never end, right? I need more time. Because, life is joyful, and not, again, like every moment of every day, but you have the tools to be able to manage through life's normal bumps that happen all the time. But you're responding to yourself, and you're crafting a world that really is supportive of you and your needs, and it makes it meaningful and worthwhile. Yeah.
All right.